Thanks everyone for joining. We'll get started soon. Kelly, should we get started now?
Yeah, I think this is a good time.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Safeeq Khan. I am the lead coordinating author for the Sierra region for the California's fifth climate change assessment. And I have with me Kelly Renner from Sierra Business Council, who is the lead author or one of the lead authors. Prakash Jha, who is helping us with some of the climate change assessment work. And we have Abhishek Chakravarti, who is a postdoc working on this effort. And we have Sarah Campi from Sierra Nevada Conservancy, who is another author for this report. Kelly, can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So just to kind of set the agenda for today's event, and this is one of the several stakeholder engagement that we have in our plan that we hope to conduct in the next several months. So stay tuned, and we'll give you more information in terms of how to stay connected. But for today, the agenda that we have is basically kind of give you an overview of why these assessment efforts are needed and how that is helping the communities and helping the nature and the natural resources in the region. So more on that later. But then, the rest of the hour would be filled with kind of going over what was included in the fourth climate assessment and what missing and what do you all want to see included in the fifth climate assessment. So I don't really need to state the obvious. Our climate is changing, and it's not only the climate that is changing. Our needs are changing. The risks that are associated with the climate is changing. There are new issues, emerging issues. So we want to make sure that we capture as much as we possibly can and make sure that we are representing everyone in the region. And then we'll talk about the next steps and more information on how to stay involved. So Kelly, next slide. So in order to kind of provide you a brief overview of why we need to have these regional climate assessment, so we have Elia Baker-Lowe from the California Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, formerly known as the Office of Planning and Research, and Elia is the program manager for climate change assessment, effort. So I would have her to kind of talk briefly in terms of all these efforts and basically the whole process of this exercise and how we got to this point. So Elia, you want to share your screen?
Sure. Thanks so much, Safeeq. All right, folks, I'm just going to share my screen here. And give me a minute. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Just click heads up. Great. Oh, and I will into the beginning. Okay, great. So hi, everyone. So again, thanks so much for being here. This is so exciting to have these regional convenings. My name is Elia Baker-Lowe. I'm the manager for the climate change assessment across the state. And here representing a much broader team, an interagency team that's leading a lot of the development of this work. So I work with the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, but key partners in our efforts are with the Strategic Growth Council, the Natural Resources Agency, and the California Energy Commission. So I'll just share a few highlights about the overall assessment, where we're going, and then how these regional reports are so significant to telling the story and providing the information that communities really need to take action on the climate change future ahead of us. So in many ways, this assessment is, it's a new structure. We have for the first time new statutory direction, and with that, some interagency leadership, structural changes where the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation is now the main coordinating agency. This is also the first time that we have a devoted funding source to support these efforts. So we're very excited to be able to go further with this fifth assessment in advancing the research and information that we produce. And another key piece of this that is very special for this assessment is that it's very grounded in a community-driven process. So this workshop and a lot of the events that many on the call I think have participated in so far has really been fundamental in shaping the scope of the work that we do and helping to build resources that are actionable and meaningful. So a little context on how the assessment fits in with some of the other state climate portfolio. In many ways, this is a forward-looking compilation of the best information that we have, looking at the impacts of climate change between now and the end of the century, and what are some pathways that we can all employ to adapt and to build resilience to those impacts. But there's a lot of great work happening across the state, and just a couple examples. Some complementary efforts are through the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OEHA, in their production of the Indicators of Climate Change report, kind of looking backwards at what has happened, how do we know what's changed. And then there's a variety of efforts, and a couple I'll highlight are around action. So the California Adaptation Strategy, led by the Natural Resources Agency in partnership with LCI, is developing actionable steps that the state is taking to improve our resilience and adaptation to climate change across the state. And the CARB scoping plan, which is a little more mitigation focused, is also kind of our next steps to achieving those climate goals. So a key piece of this is the ways that it informs both statewide action and plans, but also at the regional level. So our goal is to produce information that informs those efforts, various planning efforts, investments, and action, helps kind of align and set priorities in those spaces. And then providing local jurisdictions with the information that they really need to go further and to help develop their local or regional assessments and plans. I want to show you kind of the broader portfolio that we're working with, and these are just the main products of the assessment. So a lot of folks consider kind of the statewide summary to be that main report, and in many ways that's true. It's meant to uplift the key findings throughout the entire assessment, but it's built upon this very robust foundation and interconnection between these various products. So we produce downscaled global climate change projections that are specific to California, and with that, some modeling scenarios that help guide a lot of the original research and some of the state of the science that you'll see reflected in the regional reports. We have this suite of original research products, which includes an energy portfolio, core climate research, more technical reports across a variety of research topics, and a devoted tribal research grants program to uplift Indigenous knowledges and tribally led research. So all of that gets kind of compiled and synthesized into different contexts through the regional synthesis reports. And we're talking about the Sierra Nevada report here today, but also a set of statewide topical synthesis reports on some broad issues of statewide significance. And to put this another way, I want to highlight as well that what's not well reflected in that summary of the products is the devoted public engagement that has really informed this whole process. And a new piece of the program through our broader tribal research program, which includes a tribal advisory group. But this timeline here is really meant to show that we are halfway through the process. We are gearing up to roll out the complete assessment in mid-2026. And so the work is underway. These regional synthesis reports are an absolutely essential piece of that puzzle and telling the story in a way that's relevant and useful for the communities across the state. And so we're very excited to be kind of putting those pieces all together and preparing to share that publicly in a couple of years, or just under a couple of years at this point. So that takes us to the regional synthesis reports. And I think what I want to highlight here is a couple of things. This, again, is really meant to be a community-driven process. So these discussions are so essential to guiding the work ahead, informing the scope and the development process. We have made some adjustments to the boundary, if you're familiar with the fourth assessment, to kind of capture some input that we received through some of those engagements and working with experts to kind of highlight the priorities and the climate experience in one area of the state to the next. So the Sierra Nevada region was adjusted in between the fourth and the fifth assessment, and we think that makes for kind of a closer focus on some of the common issues that folks are seeing. But we also want to highlight that the climate doesn't necessarily respond to the boundaries we draw on a map, and so there's a lot of coordination across these regions, and we're working very closely across the broader assessment to make sure that there's a cohesive narrative throughout. But a key purpose of these reports is to provide a state of the science and uplift existing resources and knowledges at that regional level, and really help to guide the local priority setting and investments and planning to take action towards building more resilience across the state. And with that, I know we have a lot to talk about. I just want to close with a couple highlights of ways that you can get involved. This is our email list. We have more information on our website. And we also have produced recently a new video to kind of walk through all of these components that we would welcome you to review at your own time. And with that, I'll turn it back to Safeeq. Thank you.
Thanks, Celia. All right, so with that broader context, let's get back to the Sierra region. So by now, I guess you should have a good understanding of what the the geography that we are representing as part of the Sierra Regional Synthesis Report. But before we dive into that, I wanted to kind of give you a brief overview of what our team, the current author team, looks like, and what are some of the opportunities or places where you can fill in if you have interest and expertise. So the way the whole kind of this report is structured as far as the author and other folks are concerned. So I'm the coordinating lead author. So I'm managing pretty much the logistics and bunch of other stuff and making sure that we are making progress. And then we have two lead authors, Tapan Pathak from UC Cooperative Extension and Kelly Runnell. You already heard her earlier. And so they are leading the charge. But we have these topical authors. So we have we try to capture both the topical areas that are important and critical for the region, but at the same time we try to capture the different institutions, because we recognize that they all have different expertise and uniqueness, and we want to make sure that we leverage that as part of this effort. So we are still kind of filling few gaps in our author team. We currently do not have anyone representing the tribal interest and tribal knowledge in the team. So we are working on that aspect. So if you know somebody, or if you are one of those individuals who have the capacity and know-how, just reach out to us, and we'll follow up from there. We are also kind of as part of this exercise and future exercise, we would also like to hear what we are missing in terms of the topical areas. So we want to make sure that gets captured as well. So we currently have at least two slots that are vacant on the author team, and those are intentional. The other ways that you can get involved in this effort is through the Technical Advisory Committee. So if your name is in this list, and Mike, I'm looking at you. I'm still waiting for you to respond to my email. So your name is here, but I put a question mark because I haven't heard back from you. But others, if you feel that this is something that you can contribute to, just reach out to us. So we're looking to fill in the Technical Advisory Committee. At the same time, we're looking for a broader Community Advisory Committee. That will kind of provide details in terms of what the roles and responsibilities are. But just let us know if this is something that you would be interested in. Next slide. All right, so if you're not familiar with California's fourth climate assessment, so Kelly, would you mind putting the link for the fourth assessment report in the chat, so folks can either access it now or access it later? But this is what the fourth assessment report looks like for the Sierra region, and Mike is in the attendance. So he was the lead coordinating author for the fourth report, and thanks, Mike. This was a job well done, and I think they really tried to and did a very good job in terms of capturing the flavor of the region, and came up with this really kind of subtopics that capture pretty much everything. So going from, kind of providing a nice overview of the climate and climate projections, because those tend to kind of, drive everything else. So looking at how precip and temperature is changing, and how is that driving the snowpack and water supply and related, services. Then looking at some of the kind of the vulnerability and adaptation related to terrestrial ecosystem and biodiversity, along with water resources, community and some of the other related vulnerabilities. And then, kind of summarizing what are the regional knowledge and resource gap that we need in order to address those vulnerabilities. So going by climate, wildfire, water, communities, and other hazard health and emergency management. And that was a very nice, conclusion and kind of a synopsis of the report. So this is really, we are starting with this founding document because, we want to, build on the past effort as opposed to trying to recreate everything. So for the rest of the, hour today, what we are going to do is provide you kind of an overview of each of the topical areas, what was covered, and we ask your feedback in terms of what you would like to see new in that in the fifth assessment. So Kelly just put in the chat. So there is a link to the fourth assessment. So if you want to look that while you are listening, or just rely on the PowerPoint summary that we are providing, but make sure to open the feedback form and take notes as we are talking, and whatever feedback and input that you would like to give. Or you can save the link for later and write down somewhere else on a piece of paper, and then in your kind of calm and quiet time provide a feedback later on. So with that, I'm gonna hand over to Sarah Campy, who will get things going.
Yeah, hi everyone, Sarah Campy with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. I'm going to kick off talking a little bit more in depth about what is contained in the fourth assessment, just to give some context. And then, as Safeeq said, that can help you all think about what you'd like to see included or changed in the fifth assessment and provide us with that feedback. So the introduction of the fourth assessment, and probably likely in the fifth assessment, provides some context for this role of the Sierra Nevada in California today. It's a bit more of a current conditions overview. So we talk about the provision of ecosystem services, touching on hydropower, water, the population. There's an overview of Sierra Nevada regional topography and ecology, including the vegetative communities, some of the economics and land use in the region. And as you can see on this slide, it's worth noting in particular that there is a call out box for wildfire. As I'm sure everyone on this call or on this meeting is aware, that between the fourth and fifth assessment, I think wildfire has been an even greater, or we're all aware that it's a greater driver of change than I think what we were thinking of in the fourth assessment. And so and wildfire comes up repeatedly throughout the assessment, but if there's a way that we should be talking about wildfire differently, other than just updating a lot of this information, we'd love to hear that. So again, if there's any comments immediately, you can put them in the chat. The Google form is great, or you can, of course, reach out to us in other ways. And with that, we'll move on to the next slide, which, Aaliyah already talked about the boundary change, so I think we can just skip this piece. Yep, and then I'm going to hand that over to Prakash.
Thank you, Sarah. So in the climate projection chapter, we saw that the fourth assessment has primarily emphasized changes in temperature, precipitation, snowpack, and runoff. But the impact of these changes, such as wildfire, are covered in another chapter. So while we'll continue to include those core variables, are there any additional areas you would like to cover in this chapter? I mean, in the fourth, like in this climate projection chapter. So use the feedback form, and please note your write note on your ideas. Okay. So for example, we could expand our analysis to include extreme events. This could include examining the number of days with temperature exceeding critical thresholds, or quantifying the portion of total precipitation from intense or prolonged storms, such as 3-day events and atmospheric rivers, and total number of dry days during winter and spring. It is also important to note that emission scenarios have been changed from the RCP to SSP, which is shared socioeconomic pathways. Although both of them, RCP and SSP, are based on radiative forcing, which has been added in the atmosphere. SSP add an additional layer of socioeconomic pathways which influence emissions under 5 listing categories. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Prakash. So I would like to just pause, for maybe a minute or two, and give people opportunity to either put their feedback in the chat, which I'm already seeing it's coming in. But if you want to speak out, just unmute and and just say it. And we're recording this webinar, so we'll capture that way as well. So
Okay, if nobody's going to speak, this is Mike Dettinger. I just wanted to make a couple comments. I actually start with a question to either you, Safeeq, or maybe Kelly. Do you have a target length for this thing? And I'll just say, we were last time, we were told to keep them down below if possible. Something, I don't remember the exact number, but let me say less than 40 pages. And in fact, I think they wanted it, quite a bit less than 40 pages. I wasn't alone. Our team wasn't alone in sort of saying can't be done for a first go at these region reports. They said, oh, just tell us what's new. And we said isn't exactly this kind of report existing, and so what's new is everything, but I mentioned the length because some of the things that we did, like the breakout box that was commented on, we did a lot. We were trying to figure out how to take something that ended up being 77 pages plus references and make it readable and feel hopefully like it was less long, less daunting. And we used the breakout boxes, we felt, was a way to advertise, really pressing issues and things that were being done. We tried to lean hard on good news, what was being done. And then we also, I did a thing where if you went through the report and read only the bolded sentences, where there would be these bolded sentences at the head of sections and sometimes in the middle of sections, that you would pretty much get the gist of the thing, and then you could always dive in and read through the text, the deeper text if you wanted. But I'm just, I think that business of target length actually is going to be really important for you to figure out, to what extent do you stick with just the biggest, findings or whatever, versus how much of a narrative you want to give this thing. So that may be my only comment, but I just wanted to ask about that.
yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for that great insight. Yeah, I would have imagined that the challenge, right? You're trying to manage a vast geography with a vast range of issues and topics in a 40 page or less. So that is a tough task. We have not received any kind of clear guidance in terms of the number of page limit, but I presume we would like to stay consistent with the previous report. But Elia, feel free to comment. We were given like a draft kind of an outline that we are working on. So right now, I think what we want is not to constrain by the page limit and get the feedback and kind of, try to capture the wider net and then kind of work our way out and see what is possible within the constraint of, definitely we don't want a 100-page report. All right, we want the report to be condensed and digestible. So that requires some time making compromises. Elliot, do you have a comment?
No, I'm just saying yes.
Yeah, thanks, Safeeq. Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit, and thank you, Mike. It's a helpful note, and I think we've definitely learned so much from the past process. So really appreciate all the insights and the lessons there. But what we've provided kind of generally across these reports is a recommendation for between like 70-80 pages to shoot for. There's different ways of kind of highlighting some of the key findings, and we're asking that there's a summary to capture some of that in a quick kind of takeaway. But there's also an opportunity to look at are there different ways of targeting specific audiences that might need different messaging. So there's a few options to do that. But yeah, the ballpark to Safeeq's point, I think 100 pages is a bit clunky, but we also, you know, we want to really tell the story that needs to be told. So finding the sweet spot there, around 70 to 80.
Thanks, Elia. Okay, so I'm seeing there's a lot of good feedback and comments coming in the chat. So keep those kind of going. And in the interest of time, I'm going to move into the next one. So the chapter 3.1 focused on terrestrial ecosystems and biodiversity. So in the fourth assessment, was climate effects, trends, and projections in ecosystems. There was a lot of discussions on focal ecosystems, including forest, oak, woodland, and meadows. Trends and projections in those ecosystems, looking at the wildfire risk associated with forest, oak, woodland, and meadows, and then extreme events and climate variability as it relates to these ecosystems. And a lot of emphasis was on carbon storage and the effect of wildfire and how that is a driving force in terms of Sierra being a carbon source or carbon sink. Which was a very detailed, and then some kind of discussion on biogeographic shifts as the temperature continues to warm. The kind of the range of some of these species are kind of moving along as well. So there was some discussion on that as well. So on this, if folks have any thought, what they would like to see. I mean, Sierra is forest, oak, woodland, and meadow, but we do recognize there are people living in these ecosystems, and there are private land as well, including some of the land that is being managed by our tribal partners. So if you have any thoughts on what is missing here and what we should think about in the fifth assessment, please do let us know. Next slide. The next one was water resources. The water resources, I feel was very detailed. Looking at, this is a climate report, so everything is kind of centered around the climate effect on looking at the surface water availability and the risk in terms of flooding and so on and so forth. And a lot of kind of the vulnerabilities were discussed around surface water supply. So water storage in the snowpack, in water storage in our reservoirs, groundwater. Even though people don't think about groundwater in the mountains in the Sierra, but that is super critical for people who live in those mountains. But also for ecosystem, and because a lot of the ecosystem during this long drought, they actually rely on groundwater. Effect of drought, climate change and drought, they go hand in hand. And I think, there's this new kind of emerging field where people are talking about compound impact, how climate combined with drought is actually making a much bigger shift and change than, one of these drivers alone. So we hope to capture that. Water quality was discussed as well. And then looking at the demand side. But mostly the demand side was mostly centered around the ecosystem water demand, not so much the urban or downstream water demand. Okay, so that's the water resources. Next slide. All right. So I'm going to hand over this to Kelly, and she's going to talk about what was captured in terms of the communities.
Thanks, Safeeq. Yeah, so in the section 3.3, focused on communities, there is a lot of great work in here. And I think John Wentworth's comment too about integrating with California Jobs First initiatives, I think this section is where a lot of that integration can happen pretty easily. So there is a regional disadvantage definition, county level demographics included in the fourth assessment, and then highlights of various economic drivers across the region. So natural resources, agriculture, and tourism. And it does dive into the climate vulnerabilities faced by these communities and then some adaptation strategies. So we're thinking of keeping this outline pretty similar, updating the data, a lot of it that's going to come from the California Jobs First regions that make up the Sierra. And then also thinking that there could be some potential to add in economic, employment, and small business impacts from climate change. I think we've seen a lot of these since 2018 with Tropical Storm Hillary and some of our massive winters and impacts on businesses there. So feedback on anything else you'd like to see included or changed in the communities chapter in the survey or in the chat, please let us know.
And again, let's just maybe pause for another a minute or two to see if there are like any burning question or comments that folks might have that will give some opportunity for people to take some notes, collect their thoughts. Because we realize that we only have an hour and we're probably going too fast. So this is really, I think the goal here is to kind of give you the flavor and then you kind of digest some of these materials afterward and then give us the feedback that we really need to shape this report. So any burning, thought or question or comment? I see some discussion going around on reservoir impact, related to flooding. So we are really looking for a contributor who is an expert on infrastructure risk, right? So primarily focused on risk to our reservoirs, highways, utilities, so things of that nature. So if you have that expertise or if you know somebody who has the expertise and interest and time, do let us know. Yeah, John, so that kind of, the potential role of multiple or mutual benefits or ecosystem services. I mean, I would love to what folks in this meeting thinks. I mean, we are kind of doing that, right? We are just breaking it, kind of in these topical areas when talking about ecosystem, carbon, water quality, and quantity, communities. So in a way, we are talking about ecosystem services, but perhaps not in a way that ecosystem services economists will talk about, right? And we would like to keep it that way, as opposed to kind of consolidating everything into one single term. But if folks have other thoughts, and if they know there are, perhaps a better way of doing it or capturing it, would love to hear about it. Compound events, yes, that is our plan, and we would, if not in a full detail, we would actually capture that this is an emerging area, and we should move away from looking at individual impacts. So whether it's a climate, drought, or wildfire, and we really need to move in the direction where we have to start thinking both in terms of the assessment of how these multiple drivers are changing the system and what we should do about it. So I mean, the science is still kind of emerging. We may not have a kind of very deep dive in some of the impact, but we would like to highlight that this is something that we need to invest and focus on. Any other thought, comment, question? If not, then make sure that you are using the feedback form. I just put it in the chat again. So keep those rolling in. And Kelly.
Yeah, this one might open up some discussion as well. So in the 3.4 section, this was some additional vulnerabilities looking at increased extreme events, so extreme heat and precipitation, and then also impacts to electricity demand and electricity hydroelectric generation, and then also impacts to emergency management and resource capacity. We're thinking that this section should also showcase some infrastructure issues that are high priority in the Sierra. So roads, water infrastructure, housing, broadband, grid reliability, all things that we're seeing increased impacts due to climate change. We aren't necessarily doing original research on this, so there's not going to be an inventory of roads and culverts or anything like that in this report, but wanting to make sure that that's captured since it does seem to be a large issue in the Sierra and in rural regions in general. So definitely want feedback from all of you on if there's priority infrastructure issues that should be included in this. And then if you have data sets or you have, critical case studies or anything that would go along well with this section, please put that in the feedback form. Feel free right now to, Safeeq said, welcome to unmute and discuss on the call.
So in this list, what are we missing? Are there, I know that the recreation is a big, source of revenue and economic activity in this region, and with losing, snowpack, I think there's a big concern. So I'm not sure if folks would like to see some of that, discussed. So John, was S comment on the kind of the ski areas and kind of winter activities? Yes, John, go ahead. Or you were just affirming my comment?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Safeeq. I think it would be helpful, we don't have to do this now, but to understand, going back to California Jobs First, how economic drivers and the role they play, such as recreation, how they will help inform the assessment. Again, we don't have to get into all that now, but that I think would be of interest. And also, in coordination with that state policy, set of policy objectives, things like the California Wildfire Task Force and the policy recommendations are coming out of that. We can discuss later how you see integrating those types of things into the assessment, which leads maybe to a final question. Will there be any recommended actions associated with the assessment, or is that not appropriate for this document? Let us know whether that's, if that will be part of this thing. Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding is that no specific recommendation, but perhaps highlighting existing model projects or model adaptation. We cannot really kind of propose or promote one over another, but my understanding is that we just need to synthesize the information that's out there, identify good examples on adaptation and put it there. And there is a slide, on that later. But we are not here to, make or kind of, recommendation over one solution, make a recommendation of one solution over another.
Okay,
Ellie,
good. But there will be an opportunity to cite policy documents, action plans, things like that already existing that may be germane to the region.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Elliot, do you want to comment, or do you think that was?
No, I mean, that was great. I mean, just to agree, I think this is a space to uplift the best information that we have and to really provide that in a context that that helps folks make their own decisions, but not to specifically guide anybody in what to do. But to Safeeq's point, I think highlighting those examples and what we know about the risk and vulnerabilities between now and the end of the century and on different timescales, that will give folks a foundation that can kind of guide those next steps.
Sorry, just to be clear, how many years do we have until the end of the century? 76?
76?
Okay, yeah. Good to know. Okay, thank you.
We got some time.
Okay, maybe. Thank you.
All right. Any other? Yeah, rain and snow event. I think, that is becoming a big concern for sure. Seeing what was happening in 2023. I think that's definitely a big risk to communities and infrastructure. All right, so we'll kind of keep moving. So Kelly.
So this one on chapter 4 was the regional knowledge resource and gaps. And this one, it kind of dives into gaps we have in various climate projections, wildfire projections in particular, water and water infrastructure, lack of community data at multiple levels, and then hazards, health, and emergency management. The fourth assessment does a great job at this, but things have changed. And so if there's feedback on either gaps that have been filled that of new data sets that exist now that we could include or incorporate in, and then if there's more gaps that have arisen from either California Jobs First and we're identifying new gaps or other initiatives that have happened since 2018 that we can embed in here. So just a space to share information.
If I can make a comment, Mike, this is Mike Dettinger again. If we could have gotten our hands on a really knowledgeable, I'll say that, really an expert, but really a knowledgeable person on the health issues, I would have killed for that towards the end there. It's really important. All of the region report teams were kind of competing to get the attention of some folks in the state who do this sort of thing. But there were only a few of them who were willing to stick their heads up. And if you can find someone who's really knowledgeable at that end, I think it will help a lot. It's important stuff, and we just sort of were reduced to skimming through county reports and the like to try and make some sense of it, and we weren't experts. So.
Oh, we already have a volunteer, so thanks for making that point.
Good. That's the whole point of this exercise, because you do not know who is in the attendance.
Well, yeah, no, that's great.
Awesome. So if you feel I think the state has done a lot between the last report and this report. So I would really encourage you to see some of the work that is coming out of the California Wildfire Task Force in terms of putting data together, filling the regional knowledge gap for both reducing wildfire risk, climate adaptation, and meeting the state's 30 by 30 goal. So check that out. But if you feel that there's still something that's missing, both in terms of data, resources, knowledge, just let us know, and we'll make sure to capture that as well. Okay, next.
So this is this slide sort of just captures all of the kind of call out boxes that Mike was referencing earlier about a way that they were able to shorten and kind of condense information in. So these bullets in the fourth assessment box here are throughout the report, so in various chapters, and have to do with the chapter that they're in. And like Mike said, most of them are really sort of positive things that are happening, the strategies that are working on the ground and the initiatives that are happening. So it'd be great for us to have updated initiatives, implementation projects, things that are working on the ground from all of you. So this is, again, what John, you were saying too about, is there an opportunity to share adaptation strategies? And this is sort of that space to highlight kind of case studies of things that are working. We can also highlight, critical issues. There are some in here that are, also kind of more like the wildfire one, which is kind of a big issue, and highlighting that. So on either side of that spectrum, kind of this will be our focus on case studies in the adaptation strategy portion. So this is that space. So in the form, the feedback form, if you have any ideas on those, you can give us something high level, and then we can reach out to you for more detail, do an interview or ask you to write, a few paragraphs on it yourself. But this is really, there's going to be more opportunities to get this type of feedback as well. but this is sort of a first base. If you have a great example that you want to be included, please let us know. We'd love to have it.
Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so keep those feedbacks coming. I would like to kind of provide the kind of an overview of next steps as part of this exercise. So here are the things that we are working on and will continue to work on. So we are right now working on digesting all of the climate data and projection data. And believe me or not, every time I feel that I know everything, but then something new comes up. These climate projections, they keep changing every new IPCC report, and you have to really go back to drawing board and try to understand. So we are trying to digest that as much as we can and present it in a way that it's easy for you and easy for everybody else to actually read and get the information out. So because more is not always better, so we have to really kind of synthesize and crunch the numbers. And after we have those projections done, the topical leads are working on kind of getting the the synthesis of existing knowledge, where the state of the science is, looking at both the peer-reviewed literature as well as the the white papers, gray literature, and all those sort of stuff, getting those put in the draft report. And we'll keep doing this community engagement. So right now, this is the early on to kind of get even the reshape the report outline itself. But also, like as we make progress, we'll kind of reach out to you all to provide us more feedback on those individual subtopical areas in terms of what is being captured and what we are missing. So it will be a more kind of deep dive into the individual subsections later on. So we have the plan to actually do several of these online virtual engagements, but at the same time, we'll also do some in-person events as well, and those will be a good opportunity for you all to give more detailed feedback on some of the content. And also, if you have expertise in any of those topical areas, and if you feel that you do not have the capacity or the bandwidth to actually write the section, but you might be able to write a paragraph, or you might be able to give a read and early feedback and comment on some of those sections, do reach out to us, because I think those are all valuable and helpful engagement. So after we have the draft report and then the community feedback and engagements, we'll work on making sure that those feedbacks are captured and those drafts are revised, and before we actually submit it to the LCI for their expert review. And after the second round of review, we'll work on revising and producing the final report. So this is really the kind of the different steps that we are following to get from the outline to the final polished report. So again, you have the feedback form. You can bookmark it. You can save it now, and keep sending those comments and feedbacks. Maybe you will go to bed tonight and then wake up with some really cool thoughts and something that like oh my God, how did I miss this? Would it be nice to have this in the report? And then send us that tomorrow morning. So we'll appreciate that as well. And then next slide. Yeah, so at this point, I think we still have a few minutes left. So we'll provide you some details in terms of how you sign up for our mailing list, because I think we are also growing and making sure that we are reaching out to everybody. So Kelly just put in the chat. So there's a mailing list form. So make sure that you sign up. And also, if you have your own internal contact, make sure that you forward that to them as well. We're trying to capture as a wider net as possible, making sure that all voices and all opinions are actually being captured and heard. So we'd appreciate that you helping us, kind of reach as much, kind of capturing a wider net as much as possible. So yeah, so we have a few minutes left, and if you have any burning thoughts, questions, comments, then we'd love to hear that as well. So looks like everyone is busy typing. Elia, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have any kind of final comment, thought before we close out?
I think Safeeq, sure, happy to. Just really just a huge thank you. I think this is the most meaningful part of the assessment and kind of collecting our various knowledges and expertise, and this is a turning point. We're shaping the scope of this next report. So I'm very grateful for the leadership of Dr. Khan and the broader author team, and so grateful for all of the support in making this the most useful and meaningful product that it can be. And really looking forward to following as the report develops along. But thank you so much for the time. Thanks for inviting me to be here. This is one of the more fun parts of the job, is just kind of working with folks to put these reports together and make something bigger than we could ever build on our own.
Yeah, thanks, Elia. Yeah, so as I said, this is one of several online engagement events, but we also plan to do a few in-person ones. So if you or any agency entity in the Sierra is willing to host us, and if you have the venue and the place you think would be ideal for this type of engagement, do reach out to us, and we'll make sure that that we try to kind of create an event around that place. So especially folks, if you are attending from the east side, we are kind of trying to figure out like what's the best location to actually engage that part of the state, because that tends to be left out for one reason or another. So yeah.
I'm sorry, Safeeq, have you had any contact with the Tahoe Conservancy folks?
I have not reached out to them, but yeah, that is in our discussion right now. That
Yeah,
might.
I mean, it's obviously that's towards the north end of the range.
Yeah.
Relative to a lot of people in Eastern California, but they were really, really helpful in terms of when we did have meetings, public meetings. They set us up with a meeting room and advertising and stuff like that. I don't I don't know quite who I would turn to down, for instance, in Bishop area, but I'm sure there must be somebody down there that would be, serve the same purpose if you went that route. Anyway,
Yeah.
conservancies, they were really helpful, and they would be really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I will definitely reach out to them and figure out a place. I think it's like trying to capture both the east side and the west side, and then you got like what 15 degree of latitude.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. So with that, I really appreciate you all taking your time and giving us such a valuable feedback. And so yeah, stay tuned. Make sure you sign up for that mailing list. And please fill out those feedback forms, and we will be following up with the the recording as well as the PowerPoint, so you can review and send additional feedback as per your convenience. So enjoy your rest of the day. It was so good to see some of the familiar faces, and hope to see you again, Mike, at some point. All right, take care, everyone.